I'm Fetzer, your host on Authentic News right here on RBN, live this 10th day of April, 2025. On several fronts, Trump seems to be causing a whipsaw going back and forth. Thus, he's talking about having a discussion of the nuclear program with Iran. We have a report here. He must continue to move toward Iran talks, even as Netanyahu tries to derail it. In a moment that stunned many in Washington, Donald Trump announced this week high-level talks with Iran would begin on Saturday in Oman. Sitting beside him was Israeli PM Netanyahu, perhaps the most fervent opponent of diplomacy with Tehran, would just called for a so-called Libyan model approach to Iran, a euphemism for demands so extreme they would sabotage diplomacy and push both nations toward war. But what unfolded wasn't the show of unity Netanyahu expected. Israeli officials may have known that quiet U.S.-Iran talks were underway, but they didn't expect Trump to announce high-level direct talks, especially not with Bibi right there. He added to the discomfort by calling Turkish President Erdogan very smart, urging Netanyahu to be reasonable about Turkish interests in Syria, not committing to lifting tariffs on Israeli goods, and reminding everyone of the $4 billion U.S. military aid to Israel every year. Even say one that Gaza were to end on every major issue. Netanyahu seemed unable to influence Trump's position. As the Israeli outlet Yannette put it, the White House prepared a bitter surprise for Bibi. Meanwhile, then, we now get an announcement. Trump talks about the threat of military force if Iran does not agree to a nuclear deal. Now, think about it. This is all supposed to be about Iran's nuclear weapons program. But Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. In fact, just last week, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, reported the consensus of the IC community, including CIA, that Iran has no nukes, that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. In other words, all this kerfuffle is over a non-existent nuclear weapons program, whereas reported yesterday, Bibi said the only way that works is if Iran blew up its nuclear program, but it's a peaceful nuclear energy program. There's no need to blow it up. There's no justification. Netanyahu is just displaying how much of an extremist he is in going after Iran, because Iran is a rival for influence in the Middle East. Bibi doesn't want Israel to have any rivals. That's how basic it is. President Trump Wednesday repeated his threat to use military force if Iran did not agree to end its nuclear program, saying Israel would play a key role in any military action. Well, that's going to lead to the annihilation of Israel, I guarantee. Trump said Iran could not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, which it's not pursuing and doesn't have. And if it declined to stop development efforts, military action would follow. What is he, bought into all the bullshit Bibi shovels out? I'm not asking for much, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. He told reporters after signing several executive orders in the Oval Office. So what's the deal? Is Trump even ignorant of the reports of his own intelligence community? I mean, this is bizarre. Meanwhile, displaced Palestinians are helpless as Israel destroys and empties West Bank camps. Israeli forces continue to destruction in Jenin and Tulkarm, leaving thousands displaced, homes razed, aid halted. What do? Where do you go? The Israeli army large-scale offensive against the occupied West Bank cities of Jenin and the refugee camp is nearing its 77th consecutive day, marked by widespread destruction, including bulldozing, burning, and seizure of homes. Meanwhile, the assault continues in the Tarkarm refugee camp for the 71st day and the adjacent Nur Shams refugee camp for 58 days, with ongoing military reinforcement. The destruction of infrastructure, including bulldozing, digging up streets, just demolition of homes, is a consistent feature of the Israeli attacks across these camps and surrounding area. It's unbelievable. Meanwhile, Israel bombs Palestinian journalists, killing 2 more. An Israeli airstrike hit a tent for journalists camped outside the Nasser hospital in Gaza Monday. One reporter and another man died in the attack. One of the survivors, Abed Shat, explained how the Israeli strike ignited a gas tank and burned his colleague, Himmel Al-Farqua, to death. I started taking pictures from a distance, but as I got closer to the burning tent, I saw one of my colleagues on fire. The fire was intense. It was a gas canister that had exploded, and another burning. I tried to pull him out by his leg, but his pants tore off in my hand. I tried from another angle, but I couldn't. Graphic footage posted on social media shows a man burning inside the tent, while another man tries to save him, and others attempt to put out the fire. These guys are so brutal. They are so sadistic. Here's another. Settlers burn down wedding hall, paint, death to Arabs. Death to Arabs in a West Bank village. Here's Max Blumenthal talking about how Bibi laughs over the death of the Palestinians. He finds it amusing, just terrible.
Do you think blocking humanitarian aid is also an effective pressure tactic?
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate. The level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't have given it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good. They gave it away for a good intention, and it didn't work out that way. And,
I think what the president talked about is, first of all, to give people a choice. Gazans were closed in. And any other place, including in arenas of battle, I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria.
Ignorance may have been tactical. I mean, I'm just worn out fact-checking Trump on all of this. And we might have to start taking him at his word about his intentions for Gaza. He entered office during his first term, portraying himself as a kind of a non-interventionist, not because he cared about the lives of Arabs and Muslims, because Americans had suffered so much, especially in red parts of the country, fighting the wars of choice of George W. Bush. And now Trump is pledging to commit apparently American men and materiel to turn Gaza into what he calls a freedom zone, where the U.S. will own Gaza. It sounds like what the U.S. did in Mogadishu, which didn't work out very well for the United States. This is, it stands in contravention to the whole America First agenda. And of course, he's lying about why the Gaza Strip is in the situation it's in. It's in the situation it's in because of perpetual Israeli occupation, siege, starvation of Gaza, by managing everything down to the caloric intake of each Gaza resident. That's what Israel's been doing. So he hands it off to Netanyahu, who is a professional liar who could sell a dirty diaper to a garbage can, or at least he thinks he can. And he declares that we're not the ones blocking Gaza. Really? Who's blocking it? I guess Egypt is to blame for the whole thing. But what they've done here is they've normalized the concept of population transfer, ethnic cleansing, which used to be considered incredibly controversial but it cuts to the heart of the logic of Zionism, in which Israel must maintain its own ethno-religious purity within all territory it controls, or it will cease to be a Jewish and democratic state, and it will just have to be a Jewish apartheid state. That was the reasoning of Meir Kahane, who was banned from the Israeli Knesset because he was putting forward this idea. But now the idea is so mainstream, the US president is putting it forward. And I can tell you, the whole pro-Israel lobbying world is celebrating Donald Trump for mainstreaming that idea.
Just disgusting. Mainstreaming the idea of ethnic cleansing as though it were moral, when it's grossly not only immoral, but violative of international law, human rights, the Geneva Conventions, the UN Charter, just a disgrace. Here's more. Israel changing its story after a video discovered.
They found some footage in the pocket on the phone of a dead man. It shows a red fire engine and clearly marked ambulances driving at night using headlights and flashing emergency lights. If that phone had not been found in that poor soul's pocket, the IDF would still be claiming that they had opened fire because the vehicles were moving suspiciously. Gunfire erupts and the screen goes blank. 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers, including at least one UN employee, were killed. The UN has subsequently said that Israeli forces shot the men one by one and then buried them in a mass grave. They found some footage in the pocket on the phone of a dead man. It shows a red fire engine and clearly marked ambulances driving at night using headlights and flashing emergency lights. If that
hadn't turned up, we'd have to believe the Israeli story. At least we wouldn't have evidence to contradict it, but there it is. They're lying again and again. Bibi Netanyahu be the biggest liar of them all. Is anyone surprised? Meanwhile, Saudis are deadbeats. They won't pay a $13.7 million bill for U.S. military fuel. Between 2015 and 18, the U.S. supplied Saudi Arabia with tens of millions of dollars worth of jet fuel in support of the kingdom bombing campaign in Yemen. 7 years later, the Saudis refused to pay most of their debt, and they're being rewarded for it. A DOD report that went to Congress last October, reviewed by Responsible Statecraft, previously unreported, suggests Pentagon officials are becoming increasingly desperate to recoup an outstanding $13.7 million in fuel costs that Saudi Arabia owes the U.S. DLA Energy and U.S. Central Command will continue to engage the Saudi Ministry of Defense and of Finance through United States military training missions, Saudi Arabia, scheduled meetings, various MOD, MOF, and DOD key leadership engagement, face-to-face meetings with reconnaissance Saudi Arabia, and through email correspondence until the LSC fuel debt is paid in full. Right. You know, that's just certain to happen, right? Meanwhile, a Fox News journalist debunks.
Haven't filed your taxes yet? It's easy to file.
Debunks an IDF lie. Let's see what we got here. Glenn Greenwald. Love the guy. Super.
Here, just about Yemen, we talked about this some, but Trump posted this video. He was very proud of it. There are, as you can see on the screen, I think, you can see there on the screen, this is Yemen, with about, I would estimate 60, maybe 70 Yemenis sitting around, standing up in open, out in the open. None of them are carrying guns. And even if they were, like, you're allowed to carry guns. Doesn't make you a bad person. I think we hear that all the time from the American right. I agree with that. Like, you have a gun, doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't mean you're going to go kill somebody. Doesn't make you a terrorist. But they're just standing there in a circle. It's a very common formation for Yemeni tribes. This is how tribes meet. Trump claimed that these were people plotting to go and bomb American ships. He said, we're not going to let the Houthis blow up our ships again. The Houthis never blew up an American ship. They once claimed they attacked a ship. The Defense Department said that was totally false. Israel bombed an American ship, the USS Liberty, in 1867, killed a lot of people, a lot of Americans, all forgotten. But here was Trump very proudly saying these people were plotting a terrorist attack on an American ship, even though the Houthis said before the bombing of Yemen began, we're only attacking the Israeli ship. And like, knowing that there's American drones all over the place, that the U.S. is bombing constantly all throughout the country, why would they meet just outdoors and stand in like a perfect visible formation if they were actually terrorists or whatever, plotting a military operation? That's not what they would do. But here's what the United States did, and Donald Trump was very proud of it. Trump said, oh, look, they were plotting to attack a ship. There, big bomb, they're all dead. Woo! Look, there's no one left. Totally destroyed every living person that was there.
Nasty.
Despite having no idea who they were.
Nasty.
And you had a lot of conservatives who just rejuvenated their act from the war on terror. Like, hey, we don't want any more Middle East wars. Oh, those are terrorists. Yeah, blow up those terrorists. Just bomb, keep killing the terrorists. Hell yeah. Like getting that pulsating sensation of strength. Meanwhile, just one last point about Israel. They murdered 15 Palestinian medics, ambulance drivers, people who save the lives of others. At first, they said when these people went missing, they just disappeared from the face of the earth. Nobody knew where they were. They just didn't come home. Their ambulances were nowhere to be found. The Israelis said, I don't know, we don't have anything to do with it. And then when it became apparent that they were killed, the IDF said, no, actually what happened was we did kill them. And the reason we killed them is because they were ambulances, but they didn't have their emergency lights on or sirens on, and they were approaching our vehicles in very suspicious ways. That's always what the IDF says whenever they are caught killing people, including innocent people like these medics. They say, oh yeah, they were terrorists. They didn't have their emergency lights on. They were attacking our troops. They were putting our troops in danger. That's what they said, and everybody printed it. Oh, Israel says that it killed them because they were terrorists, whatever. And that's usually the end of it. And then the question was, like, when the Palestinians found them, they were buried in the dirt along with their ambulances. So the Israelis didn't just murder these people, then they buried them. And they said, well, if these were terrorists, why did you bury them? Like, seemingly hide the evidence. And the IDF said, we wanted to respect their bodies. Because what happens is if you leave corpses out in Gaza, the animals come and eat them because animals have no food like the humans. Because the Israelis are so concerned about the dignity of Palestinians. They care so deeply about it. But then, like, they also buried the ambulance. Like, why would you bury the ambulance as well with the animals eat the ambulance?
When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help. Here come old flat top, he come grooving up slowly. Got juju eyeball, he won holy roller. He got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please.
From the Wall Street Journal. While war rages, Congo's neighbors struggle out its gold and mineral wealth, smuggle out its gold and mineral wealth. Vast country struggles to prevent Rwanda and Uganda from seizing valuable assets. Kampala, Uganda. During the 19th century scramble for Africa, European countries raced to secure territory and wealth across the continent. Now, African powers are grabbing resources from a neighbor crippled by infighting and ill-equipped to defend itself. Caught in the middle is the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country the size of Western Europe, whose forests conceal a wealth of gold, diamonds, and coltan, a key component in smartphones and computers. These mineral riches are turning what was already a region plagued by militia violence into a battleground, as Rwanda and its local allies seize coltan supplies while Uganda and its proxies moved to take over gold mines to the northeast, according to United Nations and Ugandan officials. Wow, fighting for its life. Meanwhile, Turkey reinforces a Syrian base after an Israeli attack. Tensions between Israel and Turkey continue to soar after last week's incident, where Israel attacked the T4 air base in Tadmur, Syria, a base Turkey was very open about planning to take over. Israel said the attacks on the base and others were a message to Turkey. Turkish forces were present at T4 at the time of the attack, but that's changing, with reports that Turkey has sent reinforcements to the facility and are planning to install a substantial air defense around it, allowing them to defend against short, medium, and long-range threats. Israel has expressed concern that Turkey's presence at the base would harm their freedom of action, in which they're attacking targets across Syria several times a week. The direct attack on T4 seems it may lead to Turkey doubling down on the facility, not caving in to Israeli opposition. In this case, I'm for Turkey. Meanwhile, we got Professor Mearsheimer and Danny Davis talking about
You need to watch this.
the tariff situation. What's going on here?
Retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that she and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
Caroline Levitt talking about these new tariffs and how Trump likes to punch back hard, and how he's looking to make a deal with China. Try to figure out a lot of what's going on, because this is really stuff that's breaking even as we're getting ready for the show today. Probably as we're on the air here, more things will be coming out. But the first person I thought of when we want to look at what's going on globally was international relations theorist and professor of political science at the University of Chicago, Professor John Mearsheimer. Professor, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here as always, Danny.
Well, look, this is a little different. We've been often talking about the tactical and strategic situation in the Russia-Ukraine war and stuff in the Middle East, but this is a new arena that's been thrust onto the stage here that I think we need to discuss, and I'm interested in seeing what you have to say about some of this stuff. But I want to start off just on the topic that she was referring to there, that Trump is hitting back at China, because obviously there was 185 different countries that were slapped with tariffs of one sort or another. But one of the biggest one is, of course, the number one or number two ranked economy in the world on China, which has the biggest potential implications. And, in her comment there that they're trying to make a deal, the U.S. and China, trying to figure that out. But if China comes back with is gracious enough to want to talk, Trump will be there, but that he's ready to hit back hard. Now, as I say that, she said that last night. Since that time, China has hit back with something even worse. With now just an hour or two ago, I think it was, or maybe a few hours ago, they're saying, no, not only are we not going to back down, we're coming down with 84% tariffs. How do you see this dynamic, first of all, just between the U.S. and China playing out over this trade war?
Well, I think the Chinese, much like President Trump, are in this game to play hardball. They're not going to let the United States push them around. It's exactly what you would expect. Countries like Russia, countries like Iran, North Korea, and China all understand that when you're dealing with the United States, and especially when you're dealing with President Trump, that he only respects one thing, and that's when you're tough. If you show any weakness with President Trump, he'll romp all over you. He just acts like a classic bully.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely Nothing you can do that can't be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy.
Well, here's Elliot Grant, the CEO of AIPAC, talking about their control over the Trump National Security Team. Listen to this.
But as we were talking about this discussion earlier about Congress being representative to the people world, the White House has to be responsive to Congress. And so it's working with, at the time, our friends on the Democratic side of the aisle to apply pressure the way that they know how to an administration, as it will be with this administration. Rob was talking about the people who will get appointed in some of these jobs. Look at the top level, we talk about Marco Rubio, Stefanik, and Michael Waltz. Those three people have something in common. They all serve in Congress. They all have relationships with key AIPAC leaders in their communities. So the lines of communication are good. Should there be something questionable or curious, you need access in the conversation. So you never know. One of the first candidates I ever met with as an AIPAC professional in my job as being a candidate for Congress was a guy named John Ratcliffe. He was challenging a long-time incumbent member of Congress in Dallas because this guy looks like he could win the race. I'm going to talk to him. Good understanding of the issues. And a couple of weeks before he took the oath as the CIA director, for crying out loud. He was the guy that they had a chance to speak to. So there are a lot, I won't call them a lot of ones, but there are a lot of ones.
I think if you're in Iran or you are the Houthis or any of these other proxy terrorist groups, and frankly, probably the Russians or the Chinese, you're looking at the way in which the international community should be moved on from October 7th. And all of the representatives of Israel, Israel in the war. And you're probably taking away that a great tactic in war is to put as many civilians on the front lines as possible. So
Now, this is
get killed. And
that's a former Assistant Secretary of Defense, and everyone's singing from the same hymn book, and it's all printed in Hebrew. Meanwhile, Patrick McShay, Trump and the media have dismissed the Gaza genocide, and the angry public wants to know why. This is on my blog at jameshfetzer.org. Here he begins with some quotes. Frank Stocks, investigative journalist. If the Trump admin is going to eradicate anti-Christian bias, then they should start by erasing Trump's signature from his executive order directing government agencies to combat anti-Semitism by criminalizing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Here's Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Bibi Netanyahu is a war criminal who has done more damage to the United States than just about any person on the planet. Here's President Trump. We have great things happening with our military. We also essentially have moved a budget of $1 trillion, $1 trillion. Nobody's seen anything like it. Trump rolled out the red carpet for Israel Prime Minister and International Criminal Court convicted war criminal Bibi Netanyahu for the second time in as many months, too, according to his representative, discussed tariffs in Gaza. U.S. will need a $1 trillion defense budget if Bibi is successful in talking Trump into bombing Iran for Israel and sets America on a path to another regional war in the Middle East, or likely a much larger war in Israel's quest for more land to fill Zionism, founding father Theodor Herzl's Greater Israel agenda. While Israel and the U.S. did the job of demolition crew, reducing the Gaza Strip to piles of rubble and dead bones, President Trump sounded more like a real estate mogul than a concerned politician in his joint press conference with Netanyahu, describing Gaza as incredible real estate and oceanfront property, and said cluelessly, I don't know why Israel ever gave it up. He completely ignored the ongoing genocide in Gaza and the West Bank that he and the complicit media pretend is the fault of the Palestinians. It's true. Sometimes it sounds like he's a complete moron, utterly ignorant, that this has always been Palestine, Palestinian land, that the Israelis are interlopers who only arrived in 1948 and been viewed as an occupying force ever since. Meanwhile, Senate Republicans are expressing relief after Trump has paused his tariff plans. As news that President Trump was easing up on most of his tariffs reached a luncheon of Senate Republicans Wednesday, the room reacted with relief cheers and smiles. It capped an extraordinary 24 hours in Washington, in which GOP senators had increasingly confronted the Trump admin with worries about the economic impact of the president's sweeping tariff strategy. In Senate hearings and interviews with reporters, GOP concern over Trump policies had run unusually high, amounting to a rare break with a president they have otherwise championed. Lawmakers had reason to worry. The stock market had been in a volatile tumble for days, and some economists were warning that the plans could lead to a recession. As Republicans heard from business back home worried about the president plan to navigate the political ramifications of crossing Trump, they engaged in a delicate two-step, urging the president to engage in negotiations and warning of the economic fallout of long-term tariffs, then shifting to praise for the president's economic vision. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth brags that terrorists have had a bad 3 weeks, signaling it's about to get a lot worse. Secretary of Defense Hegseth provided updates on military campaign against the Houthis in Yemen, signaling the armed terrorist group was getting shelled and things were only about to intensify. What the hell does he have in mind? The Houthis, in my opinion, are the most honorable fighting force in the world today. They have declared war on Israel, the only Muslim state to do so. They're acting in accordance with international law and the law of war. Even the United Nations has confirmed they're acting properly. It's the United States and the UK who are attacking them that are not, that are despicable, that are criminals, committing crimes against humanity and violating the Geneva Conventions. It's outrageous. The Pentagon chief indicated the U.S. military would continue to protect American interests in the region. You know, it's only like a minuscule 4% of American shipping that goes through the Red Sea. But what they're doing in not interdicting any American ships anyway, it's only Israeli. So what's this guy Hegseth doing, pretending that we don't know the facts so he can lie to us? It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facility, weapon manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open air defense assets. Disgusting. Completely disgusting. Meanwhile, Phil Giraldi, the U.S. is a two-tiered country.
60% of
This is with Judge Napolitano. We'll check it out. Giraldi is among the very best commentators in the world today. So here we have
Minister Netanyahu and President Trump met for 3 hours at lunch, and then they came out and chatted rather amiably in the Oval Office. We'll play some clips for you in a minute. The BBC and The Economist, I love The Economist, I'm not crazy about the BBC, but whatever, the two of them reported that Netanyahu was crestfallen, that in fact he came to Washington expecting to talk Trump into verbally attacking President Erdogan of Turkey and authorizing a war against Iran, and Trump said no to both. Our mutual friend, whom we both know and love, Gerald Celente, says this is a head fake. In fact, Trump agreed to do both, but is pretending to do neither in order to lull the Iranians into a false sense of security. What's your thought on Trump and Netanyahu? Real on Monday or head fake?
Well, I would rather suspect there was a bit of both. Gerald is a very, I think, good observer of what goes on internationally. And there are all kinds of reasons, for example, why Turkey, as a NATO member, as a major player in Syria now, and has to be treated in kind of a careful way. It is no question but that Erdogan of Turkey is playing the Islam card when it comes to Israel and comes to Netanyahu. And this, of course, has Netanyahu preparing to do perhaps some dangerous things in Syria, like advancing to Damascus, I suspect. So anyway, we're going to see stuff like that. But I think at the same time, Trump is serious, sort of, about talking to the Iranians directly rather than going straight to war. And he's going to probably give it a shot in the next few days. But I rather suspect that it's preordained to fail because the conditions that Netanyahu has been laying down is that he insists that, okay, there's got to be a nuclear agreement, a nuclear weapons type agreement. Fine. We all understand that and accept that. But Netanyahu has several times alluded to the developmental aspects of Turkey, of Iran, meaning its ability to generate its own weapons and to get weapons from its new allies, Russia and China. So he's basically looking at turning Iran into a wasteland, as he has done in Gaza. So I think that's the real agenda that's going to play out, and that's why we have all those bombers at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. I think he's got it right. And Trump, I'm sorry, is just a stooge of Bibi Netanyahu. Meanwhile, we have Max Blumenthal again on banning protests against Israel.
Hi, everyone, and welcome.
Bad idea.
I'm joined today by Max Blumenthal, journalist, author, filmmaker, and also the editor-in-chief of The Gray Zone. It's good to see you again, Max.
Great to see you.
So we often see that the calls for censorship, they appear to come under the guise of empathy. And in the United States, and indeed Europe as well, the political right has been very critical of how the LGBT gender ideology, especially on college campuses, has been used for censorship and cancellation. However, now we see it's the political right which is calling for censorship and cancellation on campuses with the argument that criticizing Israel's war against the Palestinians makes people anti-Semitic or supporting of terrorism. How serious do you see this development at the universities, and I guess what precedents are being set here?
Well, I've said ever since I became outspoken on this issue that the Israel lobby in the United States and around the West was the greatest greatest threat to free speech in putatively liberal democratic societies. And now all of my warnings are being realized and coming to fruition under the Trump administration, which made various promises to Zionist organizations and Zionist supporters that it would do exactly what it's doing now. And in fact, in 2024, under the auspices of the Heritage Foundation, which for decades has functioned as sort of the outsourced brain of the Republican Party on Capitol Hill, situated just blocks from the U.S. Capitol, on C Street, there was this Project 2025, which became kind of a boogeyman of liberal Democrats in the United States because it spelled out the most maximalist agenda that Donald Trump could fulfill domestically, which is playing out before our eyes in many ways and mainly focuses on attacking the administrative state, attacking the administrative bureaucracy that is supposedly the base of the liberal project. But Separate from Project 2025 at the Heritage Foundation was Project Esther. And this was the product of a group of pro-Israel organizations, not just Jewish ones, a Christian right organization called the Family Research Council, which is mainly known for opposing abortion and, the LGBT agenda, played an important role in this document. And this document lays out the blueprint that the Trump administration is following for suppressing and destroying the Palestine solidarity movement in the United States. And it focuses heavily on campus organizations, but also just on civil society groups that are NGOs, and calls for withdrawing student visas for people who participate in Palestine activism, as well as going after green card holders and withdrawing the nonprofit status of various Palestine solidarity organizations. It does
despicable, absolutely despicable going on here, this suppression of freedom of speech. Meanwhile, Trump raises over $1 billion in funding for Cornell, $790 million for Northwestern. Turns out Meta's head of AI policy is an ex-IDF, along with 100 other Meta employees. Think about that. Meta is run by the IDF. More than 100 former Israeli spies and IDF soldiers work for tech giant Meta, including its head of AI policy, who served in the IDF under an Israeli government scheme that allowed non-Israelis to volunteer for the Israeli army. Shira Anderson, an American International Rights Lawyers, is Meta's AI policy chief, who voluntarily enlisted in the IDF in 2009 under a program enabling non-Israeli Jews who weren't eligible to join the Israeli army. Well, the final stories, I'll just read the headlines and comment on a few of them. Report: Trump administration considers drone strikes on Mexican cartels. Now, the president of Mexico has made it very clear they're not going to tolerate American action. A friend of mine, deeply embedded in intel, tells me the cartels are very much a part of Mexican culture, that they're like a virtual industry. They hire a huge number of Mexican citizens, and that Mexico is not just going to stand by and allow the U.S. to attack them militarily, that it's a really bad idea. George Clooney exploded in a profound tirade at an MSNBC host. Let's check that out ever so briefly. I like the guy as an actor. He's tremendous as a comic. Hollywood A-lister Clooney played a pivotal role in forcing Biden out of the 2024 election, but the coup against Biden was even wider than anyone knew. And Clooney exploded in a profane tirade at an NBC host. Chris Whipple's book, Uncharted: How Trump Beat Biden, Harris, and the Odds in the Wildest Campaign in History, contains a behind-the-scene account of how the Democrats pushed Biden out of the race. A key moment in that coup was when George Clooney published a New York Times op-ed admitting he knew Biden was senile when Biden froze on stage at a fundraiser in L.A. Clooney hosted. He wrote Biden was too old and too mentally incompetent to continue in the race. Meanwhile, we have a black woman going viral saying murdered Austin Metcalf got what he deserved. Here's another. One of 174 reasons to question vaccines. Robert W. Malone, MD, unshrunk. This is a story about a Brownstone Institute retreat, a fascinating memorial about a journey as a longtime patient in a mental health industry. Well, we'll think about that one. Meanwhile, Bart Sabrell, Van Allen radiation belt makes it deadly to put man on the moon. I've emphasized this for years and years. Early critics were pointing this out. The Van Allen radiation belt surrounds Earth. To get to the moon, you'd have to transit. You'd need a lead about 6 feet thick in order to protect the astronauts, meaning it was impossible to go. We couldn't handle it. Plus, Benjamin Freeman on Zionists at the Willard. We have the transcript for you. It's linked, so you can find it in the stories for the show today. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And indeed, in terms of those vast number of reasons, discussion regarding the cumulative amount of mercury and aluminum in vaccines have always been around.